and I'm happy to be sitting down with you, Taylor Muska. Welcome to Missionary Moments.
Thank you.
Happy to have you.
Yeah, happy to be here. Happy to make it happen.
Yeah, because you're moving in like 4 hours or whatever it is.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I think in a week from today, we will have left Chippewa Falls, which is really sad.
I'm going to cry more tears than the Chippewa River sending over that dam right now.
There's going to be another river here.
Yeah, man. And we're joined, of course, we got a little third wheel action going on back here.
My cup in the way.
Yeah, that's right. Move that. That's like
ginormous.
Just like freed up like a third of the screen.
Literally.
But we got St. Francis of Assisi, stone cold lover of God back there.
Yep. That's right.
I think his face basically lines up with the mic if I put the camera right. So,
yeah.
Good to have you join us as well, St. Francis. So yeah, just sitting down and basically excited to chat like more long conversation form about your journey to Christ, in Christ, amongst different churches, and just kind of what that looked like. So all 35,000.
I've basically been to everyone.
All right. Well, I mean, so yeah, why don't you just share a little bit about yourself and kind of a sort of a backdrop of what even leads us to having this conversation.
Totally, yeah. So I'm Taylor, married to my husband Sam.
Shout out to Sam.
Shout out to Sam. Hey, babe. We have baby girl Lena and another baby girl on the way, which is awesome.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And yeah, I guess my faith journey, if you will, started such a long time ago. I've always been, I consider myself one of the very blessed few children that was aware of the presence of God. I feel like you don't see that a lot in kids, or maybe kids don't actually feel that. But like, I just remember being this little girl, like 5, 6, 7, and just looking up at the sky and seeing the clouds and having the light shine through, and just feeling like it was like Jesus's fingers like coming down and touching the earth, and just being this little girl in the car. I remember specifically like driving over this bridge near our home and just noticing all the cars around me and just being like, wow, every single person in all of these cars, like, they're not just other drivers, like, they are children of God, and like, I wonder what their story is. And so even just like, I went to a Catholic school growing up, so leaving mass on like Wednesday mornings or whenever we had it, and just having a very distinct feeling of joy when I left, which is really, really sweet, because when I reflect on it, I typically feel like in my adult life, I really feel God's presence, or feel most connected to Him. And that word "feel," right? Can you tell I was Protestant?
As a Catholic, I do have a vivid memory of having a feeling just once.
Just once.
No, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of a both and, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
But now in my adult life, feeling it like when I'm reading the scriptures, but it's really special being like, okay, God can and does minister to us even throughout His Word, especially for those that have no ability to read, like a 5-year-old. Like, He just meets us where we're at, Yeah. So that's really, really special to just like look at and reflect on. So I've always been there, which is amazing, and I've just been aware of the experience, which is even a gift of God itself, right? Totally is. Like, one of my favorite verses is when St. Peter proclaims that Jesus is the Messiah, and Jesus isn't like, finally somebody got it. Like, this is what I've been showing you. Right. Finally clicked for one of you bimbos, right?
Yeah.
But He was like, blessed are you, for it is not by your, whatever, what does he say?
Flesh and blood.
Yeah. But it is my Father that has revealed that to you. Right. So I always count it almost like as a gift that God has given me of just being with me. I just know it's not like a me thing. Like I did this good thing that like let God know me. Yeah. So I've always like never taken it for granted, but it's been like, wow, like that's so cool that I've been gifted with His presence, if you will.
What a great place to start. And to like say it that way too, because everything, like I think sometimes Christians don't have a clear conception of this. And when I say Christians, I'm including all people, Catholic and otherwise.
Yeah.
But the desire to seek God is itself His gift.
Yeah.
Like prayer.
Right.
Paragraph 1 of the Catechism sets it all straight as it gets going. God, infinitely perfect and blessed Himself, He's good to go, in a plan of sheer goodness created man. Why? Just to share in His own blessed life.
Right.
And so anything that we have itself is gift, and it's this rich Christian understanding and view of oneself, the world, everything as gift.
Yeah.
As gift, as a vehicle.
So
even our response, that's a work but it's a co-work. We're co-workers.
Totally.
With Christ, and so it's
more of a response.
Basis.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. And I'm so new to Catholicism. I had no idea what the first paragraph of the Catechism said.
If there's one, I tell people this all the time. Like, if you're going to memorize one paragraph of the Catechism, go crazy with memorizing Bible verses.
Yeah,
it's obviously a different kind of book.
Yeah.
But in terms of the Catechism, I think that really, like, if we have that down, everything else can make sense. If we don't have that down, nothing else will really fully make sense. We're going to be kind of grasping at straws.
Totally.
So anyway, so you're coming of age in this now. You're having these
becoming
these gifted,
a woman,
right? Well, these gifted, I think, and anointed experiences as a child. And what's that like for you as you're entering young womanhood? And
it's been a crazy journey of growing up in the church, leaving the church, and coming back to the church.
Well, why don't you talk about
right? Because I think it all kind of like, it's very cyclical.
Yeah.
And so growing up in the Catholic Church, so my family, I was baptized Catholic as like a little girl at like 7 or 8 months or something. My parents weren't super devout, but my family was. So my dad's brother and sister, and then my grandma and grandpa. So I want to say maybe he was more nominal, and that really had an effect on him. But then just being around my aunts and uncles and my grandma and grandpa, that was more of the Catholic influence, the true Catholic influence that I had in my life, if you will. But it was never in my own home. So, like my grandma baptized me in the bathtub at like 2 weeks old or something like that.
Hardcore.
Yeah, she was like really worried. Like her first granddaughter would like pass and like not be baptized. So I was kind of baptized twice, I guess. And so growing up in the church, and then my family where I was raised, my parents got divorced when I was 7. Their marriage was later annulled. And then I was always still going to a Catholic school from daycare, like before even preschool. My daycare was called Little Lambs. No, it was God's Little People. My sister went to Little Lambs. And then all the way up to 12th grade. So I've always had this big Catholic influence in my life. And
but it's principally coming from family, but maybe not immediate family, but then maybe the school culture as well.
Totally. Like, it's always been there. So we'll get into this more later, but then when my husband came to the church very recently, like, he didn't know the little cultural things of the church, like how to do the sign of the cross.
She's coming in raw, like a bowling ball.
Totally, right? We're like, I at least knew how to do that, you know?
So Lord prayer.
Yeah, yeah. He goes at the bounty prayer.
Bounty.
Yeah.
I'm very combative of him.
Yeah. And then when I was kind of at the true, I don't want to say the age of reason that the church considers at like 7, but the combative age of reason of 13, 14, 15.
They call that the age of unreason.
Yeah. Unreason.
Yeah.
You think you have a frontal lobe, but you don't.
No. It shrinks.
It shrinks at that age. I had all of these really amazing questions about Catholicism, but we had such terrible catechesis that all of the answers were just horrendous, right? So, like,
for some examples, yeah.
Yeah, so, like, when my mom, she, like, the final straw, if you will, was like, hey, my mom wanted me to get confirmed. Mm-hmm. I said, why? And she said, because if you ever get married to a Catholic man, you have to be confirmed, so just do it now.
Get her done. And that's probably not even your mom's fault, right?
No!
If your mom had been given, or anybody had been given a better reason, rationale, then probably would have given it, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So that's an example.
Yeah.
And at this point in my life, I was already falling away from the Catholic Church, but I was actually going to Protestant churches on my own. So, like I was saying before, I've always felt this strong desire to Christ, and I just wasn't feeling it. I wasn't understanding it in the Catholic Mass, the Catholic liturgy, again, because nobody was explaining to me what was happening, even in a Catholic school. Yeah. My Catholic school, I think, was much more focused on sports and excelling in that, truly, and education and getting into, like, Ivy League schools, as opposed to teaching the children in the next generation really what the Catholic life and true catechesis, which, looking back at it, is just such a shame.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Like, they're
it's always a struggle.
Yeah.
I mean, this is not just in Christianity or in Catholicism specifically, but it's that balance, which gets heightened now in a modern age where we're just inundated with information. It's a balance of trying to be both relevant and true to identity.
Totally.
And what happens so frequently in a modernized age of, oh my goodness, what are we going to do to stay relevant? Yeah. Because TikTok, the clock is ticking on us before we're just like some old traditional crusty religion that our great-grandparents liked.
Yeah.
Like, no. If this is true, we need to be true to identity. And truth is always relevant.
Totally.
Like, truth doesn't like, okay, it's going to expire here. No, it can be developed in how we present it, but it's the same truth. It's the same God. It's the same
Absolutely.
church.
Yeah.
So...
Absolutely.
Yeah, that happened a lot. 70s, 80s, 60s, 70s, 80s. There, even before that, frankly, long before Vatican II.
Right.
There's a loss of identity as the people of God, and covenant theology, and the church, the significance of liturgy. And next thing you know, we have, as one of my friends likes to say, like a catechesis that's similar basically to Sesame Street.
Literally. Yeah. Yeah.
What does it mean to be Christian? It means taking these cotton balls and gluing them on this piece of paper. I'm ready to be confirmed.
Yeah.
No. But
honestly, though.
Anyway.
Yeah. And because of, like, such poor just understanding of what the church really is and who she is to Christ, right? It was just like, well, then why would I be a part of this if there's all of these other churches where I actually feel the presence of God at?
Yeah, right.
And, like, this is so outdated. Like, oh, this is so, like, old, So, I have a really interesting story in that I never left Christ, but I left his church. Which is still really sad, though. Just knowing the value of marriage and the husband and the wife, like how it is to just, neglect a partner in a marriage, right?
So you're speaking of the church as
Exactly.
The bride of Christ.
Exactly.
Thing.
Exactly. So yeah, I just started, actually, as soon as I could start driving, when I was 16, I was like literally sneak away Sunday mornings and go to Protestant church.
What a bad girl.
I know.
Wow, sneaking away to go to church.
I'm such a rebel.
Wow.
But like...
So did you end up getting confirmed?
No.
So that
I
was
refused
kind of
it.
Was that sort of a...
Yeah.
Yeah? So that's good. It's good that people are given the choice, because otherwise, again, it's presented as, no, you must do this, or...
Totally.
Or...
Right.
But was that kind of a pivot moment for you of entering into this, well, Catholicism is kind of old news and I want to explore other options? And second question, sort of related to that, what, if to just enter back into your mindset, what was your rationale there? Like, what did you have against the church? Like, what about it maybe didn't
totally
make sense?
Like, make sense?
Yeah.
I think some of it was just the people that I saw just weren't excited about Christ. I feel like they didn't know him, and I feel like they didn't, like, they would more just like go to a church, to mass on Sundays to check it off, because it's like what you should do. It wasn't because they wanted to. It really wasn't because they wanted to even adore and glorify God. It wasn't even to really get something for himself. It was really just like, okay, maybe if I do this, I like won't go to hell. You know?
Yeah.
And that was just like, in my 15-year-old brain, I was like, this is really terrible reasoning for this. I did not like that you had to go to, at this time, I hated the sacrament of confession. I didn't understand why you needed to go to some guy when you could just go straight to Christ when the veil has been torn. I didn't like that you called priest father when in the Gospels Christ says,
Tell no one on earth your father. Right. I need to tell my son Benedict that.
I know.
We gotta get
Looking back at it, right? It's just...
Yeah.
So, and again, these were all, like, valid questions that...
Right.
People just weren't answering for me. The thing is, if I would have asked the right people, which are literally my godmother and my godfather, who are amazing Catholics,
Interesting.
I probably would have received those answers. But at the same time, I was also I was so worked up. I really don't know if I even wanted to come to a conclusion. I think I just wanted to, like, be angry at the church for some reason, you know? You know, like, you see those arguments online, and it's like you really don't want to, like, understand or come to a conclusion. You just want, like, someone to hear what you're saying. Yeah. You know? Yeah. So I don't even know if I would have been in the right state of mind to even accept an answer, if you will. But all of that stuff, like, those are just, like, the three I can think of right now that I'm just kind of thinking about, remembering, that were just a big turnoff, if you will. And then I was I've struggled with depression since I was 12, and looking back on it, it's really funny, because the thing that actually brought me back to Christ and knowing, like, wow, like, he is my true comforter, he is my father, was that little maroon red book, like Our Daily Bread, that my aunt, my godmother, gave to me probably years before I ever even used it. Like a first communion thing I found when I was, like, a teenager, and I just, like, needed something to rely on. And because there wasn't catechesis, because nobody taught me how to read my Bible, I was just, like, I remember looking back at that little Daily Bread book, and it's, like, underlined, and there's notes on the side. Like, it was truly all I had. It like, was my manna, if you will. And which is so sweet, because it led me again to Christ, but it didn't lead me to the church. So, I was just in the struggle, and then discovered the world of Protestantism, discovered a church near my hometown. It wasn't even in my hometown. It was like 35 minutes away from where we lived, and it was like a mega church. And something that was really special and valuable about that was that the messages were online. So my depression was so bad. Like, I would just, like, not get out of bed. And this is as, like, a teenager. Like, on the weekends, I just couldn't. Just, like, absolute, like, terrible thoughts, dark clouds. Just really, 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 really struggled. Couldn't focus on schoolwork, but I knew I needed to work. So it's just, like, this big hamster wheel of everything. So this church, the messages were all online. And the only thing that would bring me joy and take me out of that depression for just even a little bit was listening to these little sermons online. So I really became, like, an addict to it, because it was, like, the only thing that kept me going. Like, I truly don't even know where I'd be or if I'd be alive if I didn't have Christ. Like, just because my thoughts were so bad. And I had no medicine. Like, I was just doing it. It was just Christ and I. So, yeah, I've always have loved him. That's never really been a problem. And then that kind of led into college as well. I adored him still. That is where I really learned how to read my Bible, was in college. Yeah.
Well, so, yeah, chat a little bit about, well, first of all, is that green light still on?
Green.
I hope it's still
It's green.
Okay, good. We're good.
You were good.
It should be.
Yeah. Yeah.
For those watching at home, I'm definitely going to edit this out. But I once recorded an entire video, and it was orange.
No.
I know. And that means there was no audio. Like, I had to re-record the whole thing.
Sad.
Anyway, definitely probably won't edit that out. People are going to enjoy watching that. So, I think, like the megachurch thing, I think forms and expressions of Protestantism are genuinely like good in their appeal.
Totally.
And they're obviously authentic in their love of Christ.
Yeah.
And they're really, like, they're just deep in the word. They're all about it. They're, like, on fire. Many of them.
Truly, yeah.
And, like, you described that vis-a-vis your experience. No, it's not the experience of everybody, but I think commonly, in some Catholic churches at least, and understanding our idea of the faith is this just as something that we do. This is an outward work that we do, that I'm going to do. It's like, hey, did God call you to Mass today? I definitely didn't feel that way. It felt more like my mom saying, if you're too sick to go to Mass, you're too sick to play.
Yeah.
It felt a little bit more like that than God's voice.
Yeah.
And who wouldn't want to, like, reject that, even if there wasn't, like, a more appealing option? Like, that's just not an appealing option.
Right.
So, I think it's always, like, really important and humbling for Catholics to be able to say, like, look, whatever we want to say about Christ starting the church and the one true church and apostolic succession and the fullness of the expression of the Christian faith within the Catholic or Katoholos universal church, whatever we want to say about that, which is important, does not mean for a second that many Protestants are following 100% to the best of knowledge and ability Christ.
Yeah.
And we have many Catholics who are following 10% of what they know to be true about Christ. And it doesn't prove or disprove a church or religion or a denomination based on the people that don't believe.
Totally.
Like, that's, like, what not to do.
Right.
But just, again, it's sort of a framework of, I guess you could call it ecumenism or dialogue about this kind of thing. And I think we're at a moment in the church where it's just Christianity, where we're past sort of like the, well, you're a Lutheran, so you're no good, or you're Catholic, or you're Episcopalian, or you're non-denominational, so no one loves you.
Right.
It's like, we're kind of past that kind of banter to, let's just get this right. Let's get this right. Let's just recognize that we're all a mess. We're all basically, well, decisively sinners, yet Christ wants to save us all. And then it's about, like, what does it mean to be saved? Yeah. Type thing. So, that little rant, just to like tee us off into, like, you just, like, went deep into more Protestant forms of Christianity, and you said you were reading the Bible, so, like, what was that like as you're entering this new phase of going off to college, right?
Yeah, it was. So I struggled in college just because I wasn't a college girl. Like, I was in a sorority, but I never drank. I was like a really terrible sorority girl, if you will. Like, I look like one, I have the personality of one, but I just, but our actions just did not align, and our values did not align. I've never met a stranger, so I get along with everybody. So I had all of these sisters and these friends, right? Like a sorority of like 120 of us. But I was so lonely because there wasn't anybody that I could connect with on a deep level. Like, these were the girls, that bonded over drinking, or guys or whatever. And I just, like, even if I could connect on that level, that's not deep enough for me. Mm-hmm. So I was just really, really, really lonely. Mm-hmm. So lonely. And that's just where I turned to Christ. And the only way I knew how to do that, because the only tool I knew available to me were the scriptures. So it was such a sweet time, seriously. Like, probably an hour a day, just spending time with him, reading the word, and just truly just really being in the presence is what it felt like. Like, I felt like the luckiest, the most blessed girl in the world. I really did. Just that, like, I felt so favored. Like, just like, why is he loving me this well? Why is he, sharing all of these secrets with me? It was just so intimate. Mm-hmm. And I have so many amazing just God moments, if you will, and experiences from that time that'll just forever be stamped on my heart, of just such precious moments, for sure. And yeah, that time in college, I ended up starting a women's ministry on campus, which was awesome. And that was really sweet. And just
which is still going, by the way.
It's still going. Yeah. Yep. I still follow them on Instagram. Like, you guys, it's so funny. Like, the freshmen that I was with when I was a senior, they've all graduated now. So,
one full cycle.
Yeah. So I'm like, oh, they have no idea who I am. I'm just like liking all their pictures and creeping on them.
Yes,
yeah. Yeah. But it's really sweet to see a place that I started on campus for a woman who felt like me, just alone and lost in this college world, to be able to create a space like that for other women on campus. So that was really special. Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
Did you, well, I guess they're not, maybe the people that you know aren't in it anymore, but
yeah.
I don't know, did you return to the church and returned to the Catholic Church and became Catholic? Was it associated with the church at all? Or is it more?
It wasn't. It was just totally non-denominational. Yeah. It was a so it's called Delight Ministries, and they have they started at Belmont University in Nashville, and then you can like start a chapter.
Okay. Oh, okay.
So I started a chapter at Purdue.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So. You graduate, and how long after that do you meet Sam?
So I graduated in 2019, and Sam and I met in January of 2021, so almost 2 years later.
Okay.
Yep.
January 2021, so a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
Basically.
We have wasted no time, so.
Just like jumped right in. Wow. It's like, I like Christian sorority girls.
Yeah. Yeah.
As long as they're Christian. Right. Yeah, so I guess what was it like learning with him? Like as an adult, and like if you want to check out so while watching at home, if you want to check out Sam Muska's testimony and story, there'll be a link here at the end of this video. You can check that out. The mighty Muska couple. But what was it like for you because he comes from a non-denominational background.
Totally.
You guys are getting together, you're doing this deeper search into Christianity. Where does that lead you?
Totally.
as you sit here now, right, you're now a fully initiated Catholic.
I am.
What was that like for you?
Yeah, so I never would have thought that Sam and I would be Catholic, that's for sure. So Sam and I, he grew up evangelical, which is so funny because we were at his hometown this last weekend, and we drove by the church, and the church is called Full Gospel. And in my head I was thinking, they should call it Full Gospel minus John 6. Knowing like
John 6, couple Matthew 16 paragraph. There's a
couple that they like. There's asterisks at the bottom. So anyways, like this church, the people there again are amazing, and they really did a phenomenal job of what they knew of what Christ and his church should look like. That's the thing. A lot of Protestants just don't know, and they again have had terrible catechesis and just aren't understanding of. So anyways, he grew up evangelical, and then when lots of stuff happened in between, and then he came back to Christ on November 1st of 2020. And then we met 2 months later. So I always say that God answers Sam's prayers in like a second. It's like, I don't want to say it's annoying. It's actually really amazing, but I'm like, why? Like seriously, Sam will just say a prayer like a second later it's answered. I'm like, some of us actually have to wait. So for perspective, like Sam was praying for his wife, and then literally like 2 weeks later he met me. Mm-hmm. So, and I'm like, I've been praying for my husband for the last like 10 years, you know? So anyways,
unevenly yoked.
Yeah.
That must be hard.
It is hard. Yeah. I carry the load. No, just kidding. But so yeah, we met on this Christian dating app called Upward. Actually, it's funny, we have been so equally yoked, even though we have had transition after formation throughout our marriage and our relationship. So we met on a Christian dating app. You actually have to put in your denomination in a little like faith statement. So we both put non-denominational, and swiped right or whatever it was, matched, and then got married 7 months later. No, 9 months later, engaged 7 months later. And then I want to say definitely less than a year into our marriage, Sam really felt called to orthodoxy and to look at the Eastern Orthodox Church. And again, Sam has absolutely no background of a traditional church in the slightest. So I trusted his leadership the whole time, and I was really listening to the videos he was sending me. We even did the Orthodox RCIA. We were driving from Chippewa Falls to St. Paul for the Orthodox Church.
Wow.
Like we were just like, hey, like if this is really where Christ is calling us, we can't be like, oh, it's inconvenient.
Level up, right.
So yeah, we were all in, and I will say Sam was definitely more into it. I never felt like connected to it or really convicted of it, but I trusted Sam. And then my uncle, my godfather, actually invited Sam to go to a silent retreat at a Catholic monastery. Is that what it was? In Minnesota over kind of like New Year's of this last year. And so Sam was silent for 3 or 4 days, which, if you know my husband, is amazing, a miracle in itself. I talk a lot, but he talks a lot too.
That's good. Evenly yoked.
Evenly yoked. Yeah. And yeah, did so much digging into the papacy. That was something that was really a challenge for him.
Was that a challenge for you too? Like,
it was actually, like, looking back at it, yeah, it was. But it wasn't, like, one of the things that was, like, really holding me up. I think, like, most Protestants, something else was, like, Mary and the saints, like, blasphemy, like, they're praying to people. Mm-hmm. You know, just, again, a lack of understanding of what really is. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, Sam had these 4 days of just, like, silence, and being the only person he could talk to was a priest. Mm-hmm. And just digging and praying and reading. And by the end of it, he was like, oh my gosh, can't believe I'm saying this, but Catholicism is the true church. And just came to this revelation, like, okay, I know this now. What am I going to do about it? Am I going to follow it and love Christ's bride? Or am I going to know that this exists and walk away and either still be Orthodox or Protestant? Mm-hmm. So he called me up because I was out of town for work, and I was like, hey babe, oh my gosh, so nice to talk to you. He was like, yeah, you too. We have to be Catholic. I was like, what? I was so annoyed because I had been following his lead for, like, the last, like, 6-7 months, and we were, like, going in circles at this point. Like, it felt like he was just, like, kept changing his mind and changing his mind and changing his mind, and I was like, I just need stability. I just want something to stick. I want it to be true. I want a place to have roots. I don't want to keep hopping around. So I was like, you can keep praying about that. And if you're serious about it, then we'll look into it more. Mm-hmm. And then I think that Sunday we went to Notre Dame for the first time.
And then you, right. I was there. That was actually the day that my youngest Felicity got baptized.
That was I remember that because we were sitting right in the back. We were so nervous. We were in the very last pew. So I actually totally remember, like, what Felicity's godmother looks like. Uh-huh. Like, I remember seeing all of you guys. Like, I had, like, the perfect view of that. Yes. Wow. Yes, I totally remember that. Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right. Wow. So then, so you started, this was their first time going to Mass in a while.
Yep, my first time in a while.
What was that like? And still, like, what kind of mental or intellectual or even, like, a sort of emotional obstacles you're dealing with at this point, since you hadn't been in...
Yeah.
Like a decade or so?
Yeah, a while. So, actually, when Sam broke the news to me that we were going to become Catholic, like, it's a bad thing. That's what it felt like at the time. Catholicism. Literally, you were getting confirmed in 3 months. It's coming quick. So that was on Sunday. He told me. I actually was out of town for work, and I felt really called to go to Mass, so I actually found a Mass in Iowa on a Wednesday night, and I went to that.
Wow.
Yep. So then I went to Mass again on that Sunday, and a lot of it was, I would say, pretty rote, which is just because that's how I left it, right? Mm-hmm. It was very, like, kneel, stand, sit, prayer, just like, because, like, that's how I left it. It wasn't intimate, it wasn't prayerful, it was just, like, you do these things to make God happy, or whatever, you know? So a lot of it was actually, one, coaching Sam through it, who has never been to a Mass. And, like, I remember when the Gospels were read and we stood, like, and everybody was doing, he was like, what? Like, little things like that, right? And then, of course, I had a baby, too. So I was actually pretty distracted.
Yeah.
The first time.
I've heard about things like that.
Yeah. You wouldn't know anything about that, right? And it hasn't been until like recently, or if I've gone, it's really, I know you know this, but it is really difficult going to mass with a child and still having it be prayerful. And
yeah, the prayer looks different. Prayer is truly a sacrifice. It's a sacrificial offering. As
absolutely.
Deacon DeCook here, who has been blessed with, I think, 11 kids he has.
Yes, okay, yep.
And we were talking to him about this, and we're like, look, it's kind of a challenge to get 4 kids to Mass. We're kind of thinking of swapping off. Rachel will go to the 8 a.m. on Sunday, and I'll go to the 10, and the kids stay home with her. And he's like, well, John, it's not called the sacrifice of the Mass for nothing. And that's just right, because that's real life, too. And the Mass is supposed to enculturate, or we're supposed to include in our offering in the Mass, not just our sitting, our kneeling, our standing.
Right.
Our family, our well-being, our struggles, our worries. Heck, our distraction is itself his gift if it's offered to him. Yeah. Anything united with the bread and the wine, which becomes the body and blood of Jesus, is now within that scope of being divinized, of being supernaturally empowered to sanctify us.
Yeah.
And the roteness, which I agree, like that's not seeing rightly, it feels almost like fake or forced, and it's like, what am I doing? Yeah. But when I tell my wife, sweet Miss Rachel, I love you in the morning before I leave for work, and then I love you when I come back home, or when she's cooking in the kitchen, I'm like, wow, I love you. Yeah. Like, I'm not thinking each time, like, dang, like, that was so forced. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
How can I say I love you in a non-denominational sort of way? It's like non-rote. Like, that doesn't really make sense.
Yeah.
And that's supposed to be the liturgy. So you're coming back to it for the first time, and you're now teaching it, holding a crying baby, and holding the hand of Sam basically through Mass, like teaching him how to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how was your needle with that? Because then you also started coming to classes shortly after that on Monday nights.
Yeah.
And you were sitting down. And you guys I remember you first came in, very, like, you were there.
Yes.
you were there to learn, and you were there to ask questions. And you were not just sort of there to, like, peek in.
Look around. Yeah.
Tell, like, what was that like? Because you were going to Mass, that's one thing, but then you're, like, entering back into, like, what we might call a Catholic worldview.
Yeah.
A sacramental mindset.
It was super refreshing coming to the classes on Monday night, having amazing conversations and asking these questions that I've had, and really to be able to think about it in a way that I would actually be able to get really good answers. Answers that even if I didn't like it, that it at least made sense. And then again, I would have to, like, sacrifice myself to that truth, right? So, it was really, really amazing coming on Monday nights. Especially with Sam. We're both very, curious, present.
All there.
Hey,
you guys are smart.
Yeah.
Driven and passionate, all in the same person. So makes a difference.
Yeah, so it was a lot of fun, and it was maybe even, like, healing too, just having, meeting, you and having a friend that's not only, like, a friend and a leader, and somebody that can, like, answer all the questions, like, all in one. And if anything, like, obviously it's been a blessing to me, but such a blessing to Sam. Like, I remember you guys were meeting up, like, all the time, like
a couple times a week outside of class.
Yes.
Yeah, no, he would send me, like, an agenda of what we wanted to talk about. It's like 5 things. I want to hit the papacy, saints, purgatory.
Yeah.
I'm just like, Yeah.
Yep.
It was great.
Yeah, it was amazing. So it was just like so much fun. I was actually thinking about it like the other day, like, oh gosh, I miss it. I miss going to that. Like it was so much fun. And the church is so rich and so deep. There's a billion layers. Like you truly could go, every Monday as even a seasoned Catholic and always learn something new.
It's true.
So
what for you, was there like a thing or two that you were grappling with, even within this process of returning to the church? Like, okay, I can see sort of the logic of the church. Like if the church, for example, well, I guess I should just ask that.
Yeah.
Why for you did it make sense to return to the church? Why is the Catholic Church the church in your mind?
Yeah, the Eucharist. Just that easy. I read John 6, truly, without a combative heart of going into being like, okay, I know this is going to talk about the Eucharist. How can I defend it that it's not actually the body and blood of Christ? Right?
Right. How can we read symbolism into this rather than literalism?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of the times I think maybe in Protestant circles, right, they'd read John 6, but then just like, because it's a really long chapter, right?
Yeah.
And
so
then,
many verses.
yeah. Wow. And then just maybe the first half where it actually says like, my bread, or this is my body, right? Mm-hmm. This is my blood, or eat my body, drink my blood. Mm-hmm. But then it leaves out the second half in the Protestant churches where the disciples are like, Jesus, half of these people have walked away. Like, what do we do? And he's like, well, does this offend you? Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, dagger to the heart. I was like, I was the person that walked away. Mm-hmm. Like, I was the part of the half that walked away because, like, it offended me. It was weird. It was gross. It was all of these whatever things. Mm-hmm. It was fake. It was symbolism. Mm-hmm. So then when I read it for truly what it was and not what I wanted it to say, that's when I read it and I was like, okay, I either have to be Orthodox or I have to be Catholic. Mm-hmm. If now that I know that this exists, I have to do something about it.
That being that Jesus
is truly
the one who we love is
truly present in the Eucharist. And that is just something that I would love to share with Protestants is, like, I know that you are so, like, captivated by Christ. If you are an on fire, thank you. If you are an on fire Protestant, and if you are reading your Bible like crazy, which I know you are because it's the only tool you have, right? Then you imagine if, like, that God that you love and you've read so much about, like the God of Genesis 1 that, rippled on the waters, right? And the God that led Moses and the Israelites through the desert and was in the fire, right? With Daniel, right? And all of the God of all of these different people, and then of course the God of the Gospels. Like, what if I told you that his flesh was actually available to you? Like, how could you pass that up? How could you be like, no, I don't want to go to that church?
That physical intimacy.
Right.
It was physical and spiritual.
Exactly.
Was possible.
Exactly. Like, I know these people would do anything to see him and to touch him because I know how much they love him. Mm-hmm. But I truly just don't think that they know that he's actually... that could be, and that is available to them.
That's so interesting, right? When you said, like, that his flesh is available, even me, I'm, like, hearing that, I'm like, ooh, that's kind of weird, like, that his flesh is available to us. What is it supposed to mean? But, yeah. I mean, think of the people in the time of the Gospels where the flesh of Jesus, i.e., well, Jesus, is coming in.
Yeah.
And not all these people understood that he was fully God and fully man at the same time.
Yeah.
But at least they understood one, like, this is a man, this is Jesus, and you know what? He's healing people. How do we know? Because when he touches them, they're healed. The presence of Jesus is in a person. And in that person is also present the wholeness of the divinity.
Yeah.
And so to touch the flesh of Jesus, to be close to the flesh of Jesus, is not like this weird carnivorous, like...
No.
No, this is like a holistic yearning to be physically close to the one who loves us most.
Right. Absolutely. And so, you kind of brought up the point of, carnivore. I'll take it a step further and be like, if you're thinking about cannibalism, like, cannibalism is eating the dead. Like, our God is very much alive. And it's totally not that at all. And even if it like, we are eating our God,
Right.
which is so humble in itself that he allows him to give himself up for us in a way that allows literally him to be consumed inside of us and then to nourish every single cell of our body. Like, as a pregnant woman, why would I not go to mass then, like, all the time as much as I could? Right? Like, yeah, sometimes I forget to eat my veggies, but, like, if I can... Who needs folic acid when you have...
The bread from heaven. The bread of angels.
Yes, exactly. Right. Yeah.
So that, in short, that's the reason why, like, hey, why am I Catholic?
Eucharist.
Why be Catholic? The Eucharist.
The Eucharist. It's all about the Eucharist. Everything. I mean, the Mass is about the Eucharist. Like, everything is leading up to that point. And that's what was really cool about coming back to the church. And yesterday, Sam and I sat in the very front row. We didn't have Lena.
Okay.
And I got there before him. We were, like, driving from all over the place. It was whatever, crazy. And he was like, why are you staying up here? I was like, I don't want to be distracted by anybody else. And I really want to see, like, what the priest is doing and, like, how he's preparing the gifts and, like, what is really happening, Because it's so easy to just get distracted by what people are doing in front of you and to really not look at Christ on the altar, And that's really what I wanted to focus on. And it was really a really cool experience just seeing it all up close and personal, if you will, yesterday.
Yeah.
And just seeing that every single thing, like, led up to it. Like, if you really study the Mass and, like, the readings aren't random. They all flow together, right?
The rhythm of life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And... yeah, the Old Testament scripture is basically prophetic of what is going to be read in the Gospels. And then, the other New Testament scripture is basically going to explain it deeper, what's happening in the Gospels, right? It all flows together, for sure, and then it all points to the very thing of the Eucharist, right? So
we're consuming the Word. We come to Mass to consume the Word in body and in soul.
Yeah.
So in our soul, we can consume the Word with the Word-made Scripture. Like, the Word is not a book. The Word is not a reading. The Word is the second person of the Trinity.
Yeah.
Right?
John 1.
Bingo. Yes.
Yeah.
So that's what the Mass is all about. Far from being like some dusty old ritual.
No.
It's consuming the Word, beginning with the liturgy of the Word.
Yeah.
I.e. the Word-made Scripture. We eat the Word, we consume the Word. It's a very biblical, prophetic notion right there of Jesus telling Jeremiah to consume the Word, consume the scroll.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like he's literally eating the Word.
Right.
That's a little odd. But there's that's the meaning of the liturgy of the Word, and then we transition to the liturgy of the Eucharist, where we also consume the Word, and it's the Word made flesh. So we have the Word made Scripture and the Word made flesh, the same Word coming to us in mind and body. And there's this holism, this integralism, this holistic according to the whole, i.e. Greek translation to English, Catholic view of Christ, of Christianity, of worship. And that's pretty neat.
It is. It's amazing. And it's just so special, like, coming to Notre Dame, and then even, like, our diocese, and that, like, just reading and praying the prayer at the end for Eucharistic revival. And I know I've mentioned this before, but I'm like, people don't realize it, but, like, you're not just praying for the people in the church, you're praying for the people that are coming into the church too.
That's right.
You know? And that was so, it was just really cool. Like, of course, that's what brought me back. And it brought me back during this time of Eucharistic revival.
Yeah.
You know, like the prayers of the saints are so powerful.
Right. Right.
And so I always just like to say that as a word of encouragement whenever I have the opportunity of, like, you know, this isn't just for your child that's here in church and it might be bored. Like, this is for all of the lost on the outside.
It's for all Christians.
Exactly.
The Christian is the Eucharist is the proper, because it's Christ.
Yeah.
It's not an idea, it's a person. The Eucharist is the destiny of every Christian.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of Protestants feel like the Eucharist, that's kind of a Catholic thing, real presence type thing. No. Catholic view of the Eucharist is the proper destiny and the proper inheritance. We're inheriting Christ. It's the proper inheritance of every baptized person.
Yeah.
And so to a Protestant, it's not like leave your church, leave your view of Christianity behind and become Catholic. It's you have a good conception of Christ in the Gospels.
Yep.
Amazing. Now come and receive your full inheritance, which is none else or no one else than Jesus Christ
Absolutely.
himself.
Absolutely.
It's not converting from
as
so much as it is into a deeper walk with Christ and communion with him.
And I think that's why the Eucharist was so powerful for myself and Sam, because our Protestant background really set us up for knowing who we were coming into fullness with and who we were receiving. You know? Like, this is the same God that we've talked about, what we've learned about, that we've praised and worshipped. It's just, he's actually here in the flesh now instead of just in spirit.
Right on.
Yeah.
So, sort of final question here, I suppose.
Yeah.
So, if if somebody who's skeptical of this, a Protestant or otherwise, just perhaps somebody who's not even Christian, who's hearing this and hearing your journey in it and is skeptical of, well, I still just have reservations about joining the Catholic Church, a church that has, so many issues or problems or so many lax people or whatever the issue is that they might bring up, whatever the obstacle. And that obstacle might be specific. But just as like a general, I don't know if I can join a church that has so many issues, because it does, because I'm part of that church and I have issues. That's how I know.
Yeah, exactly.
But what do you say to people what's your response?
I would just say, similar to what you are already touching on, is, are you reserved about coming to the faith because of what the church teaches, or are you reserved about coming to the faith because of who hasn't really listened to the teachings? It's church is the one place where there shouldn't be hypocrites, but humans are everywhere.
We get around.
Yeah, exactly. So, they're still going to be here, and there's still sinners everywhere, right? And, I've never really focused on who was in the church, if you will, but more who, founded the church, who's the church about, who are the leaders, the doctors of the church, if you will, right? Because these are the people that the church is telling you, hey, if you are struggling, if you do want to get out of this hypocrisy, this is who you should aspire to be, right? So look at Christ, of course, first and foremost, and then the disciples, right? The doctors and the saints, and see, are these virtuous people? Are these people that, because this is who the church upholds. The church calls everybody into daughter and sonship, but there are some people that really probably shouldn't be mentors. our leaders.
So that's maybe a good answer. It's like find a good mentor. It's like at its best, who's
Right.
actually living what this teaches.
Yeah.
And then going from there is at least a starting point. Because
Absolutely.
otherwise it's not a starting point. It's like
Right.
finding a stop sign and then saying like, yeah, I don't want to continue.
Right. And I think
me neither, because it says stop.
right.
This person's life is saying stop, don't continue down
Right.
this route. So find somebody that's running.
Totally. And chances are too is whoever's listening to this is not perfect and has sinned at least once. And I could be pretty confident in that.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
So take heart that the church is very aware that you're a sinner. Too. And will still accept
banking
you.
on it, in fact.
Banking on it. And will still accept you with open arms.
Right.
You know, and is not going to be shocked
Yeah.
at what you've done. You're not going to, start on fire if you walk in.
Right.
The exact opposite will actually happen. You'll actually be,
Doused with water.
literally,
Baptized.
you'll...
Yeah.
Yeah, like, it's so interesting just how the devil will take anything and twist it to be the exact opposite, right? He tells people you'll light on fire. No, you're actually literally just going to be washed clean with water. Like, it's the exact opposite. So, yeah, if you're like, oh gosh, I don't want to go there, there's hypocrites. Well, there's hypocrites, and I'm so sorry, but you probably are going to be too at one point in your life. We all are. We all do things that we say
Yeah.
not to do.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So welcome home.
That's right. There's the pitch. Great. Well, I've just been, again, delighted to be able to get to know you and Sam, and happy that, again, just here on a few days before you're moving.
I know.
We're going to miss you at Notre Dame.
Oh my gosh, I
and
know.
Our friend groups. We will try not to cry during the course of this video. But,
Right.
yeah, just delighted to be able to get to know you, and very impressed with your zeal, and excited for you to bring that down to Virginia.
Thank you.
And to-
Yeah, it'll be fun.
To bring this fire and this love for Christ and His church down there. So, thank you, Taylor.
Thank you,
Thanks for
Sean.
coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me, mentoring and leading. It's been amazing.
Amen. All right. Thanks, everybody, for joining Missionary Moments. And if you get a second,
Like and subscribe.
well, I was going to say, if you get a second, you could do that, or you could go have a missionary moment and bring somebody to Christ. Don't go on TikTok.
Don't go
even
on
like
TikTok.
this video. If you're choosing between liking this video
Yes.
and telling somebody about Jesus, unsubscribe. Just like this video. I don't even care. Just be a saint.
Unsubscribe.
Okay? Just be saints. All right. Cheers.